We're going to go straight on because he got a golden buzzer from Simon Cowell in his audition and then another one from Amanda Holden during Saturday night's semi-finals, which means that singer Matty J is heading to the Britain's Got Talent final.
Have you ever poured everything you had into a single moment, delivered a performance nobody in the room could pick apart, and still walked away empty-handed? That's exactly what millions of viewers felt on the night of May 30th, 2026. When Britain's Got Talent crowned its Series 19 champion. And the real story behind that result isn't the one most people landed on. If you've ever watched this show from the first audition all the way to the final and come away thinking the most talented act doesn't always take the trophy, you're not wrong, and you're not just a sore loser either. There's something structural going on here, and Matty Juniosa's finish is the clearest example of it in years. The Series 19 final aired live on May 30th, 2026. 10 acts took the stage across 2.5 hours, competing for a £250,000 prize and a slot at the Royal Variety Performance. By the time the last performer had finished, all 4 judges had reached a level of agreement that almost never happens on that panel. Every one of them was floored. Then Alicia Dixon said something that, looking back, gave away more than any of the praise combined. She turned to Matty and told him she was relieved the judges weren't the ones with the final say, because after that performance, he could realistically win the whole competition. It sounded like a compliment. It was also, quietly, a warning she already believed wouldn't pan out. She was right to worry. The Hawkstone Farmers Choir, 34 farmers and agricultural workers from Chadlington in Oxfordshire, was named the winner of Series 19, the first choir in the show's history to take the title. A drone collective called Celestial came second. The dog dancing pair Anastasia and Salsa finished third. Matty Juniosa, the only contestant that series to receive 2 golden buzzers, came fourth. Within minutes, the word "robbed" was trending on X. Posts poured in from the Philippines, across Southeast Asia, the UK, and the US almost simultaneously. This wasn't a scattered complaint from a small fan corner, it was a shared, instant reaction spanning several countries at once, loud enough to dominate the conversation for days afterward. And sitting in the audience, visibly emotional as the choir's name was read out, was Jeremy Clarkson, the broadcaster and farmer who'd helped found that very choir back in 2024 to support the mental health of farming communities around his Oxfordshire estate. That single detail was enough to spin off an entirely separate online argument about whether the outcome had been engineered. Claims spread that Clarkson had offered followers drinks in exchange for votes. No credible source ever backed that up, and chasing it distracts from what actually explains this result. Something far more structural, far less comfortable, and hiding in plain sight since episode 1. Here's what Britain's Got Talent sells itself as: a nationwide hunt for the country's most talented performer, shepherded by professional judges whose golden buzzers exist to flag the truly exceptional. That promise holds up through the auditions and semi-finals. When Simon Cowell hit his golden buzzer for Matty, that was the talent contest working exactly as advertised. But the final is something else entirely. It's a public phone vote, restricted to UK mobile numbers, where every act starts back at 0 the second the lines open. 2 golden buzzers, the show's highest possible endorsement, count for nothing once the final begins. Every judge's verdict from the earlier rounds counts for nothing. Months of momentum, critical praise, and viral moments reset the instant the broadcast goes live. This isn't hidden. It's stated plainly in the format. But its consequences are enormous once you actually think them through. The final isn't the conclusion of a talent competition. It's a separate contest that happens to borrow the same stage, hosts, and judges as set dressing, while running on completely different rules. One phase is judged on vocal and performance skill. The other is decided by whichever act can rally the most UK phone numbers in a 2-hour window. Matty Juniosa won the talent competition half of this show decisively. He's the only solo vocalist in the entire series to land 2 golden buzzers. What he stepped into during the final was a different game altogether, and the reasons he couldn't win that game had nothing to do with whether he deserved to. To understand those reasons, it helps to go back and see exactly what he brought into this competition, and why that combination was both extraordinary and, for this particular final, structurally not enough. Matthew Juniosa was born in Mandaluyong City, Metro Manila, in a household where music was woven into almost everything. He started performing around age 5 or 6, gave himself the nickname Mattyonce, after his idol Beyoncé, and grew up worshipping Aretha Franklin, Christina Aguilera, Stevie Wonder, and Tina Turner. He was the friend who made everyone sit down and watch One Direction's original audition tape on repeat. And if you've ever had that one friend, you know the specific brand of devotion that drives it. That One Direction detail matters more than it seems, because the man who pressed Matty's golden buzzer on Britain's Got Talent was Simon Cowell, the same person who mentored One Direction into global stardom. The kid who wore out that audition footage grew up to receive the same gesture from the same man. Before that, though, there was a long stretch of almost but not quite. In 2019 he competed on the first season of Idol Philippines, made it deep into the competition and was eliminated. He formed a vocal trio called Idols, released music with a major Philippine label, competed on a nationally broadcast talent show and finished fourth. He's spoken openly about criticism he faced over his weight and appearance during that period, and about being told he had talent but wasn't relatable enough for mainstream audiences. If you've ever been told something like that about yourself, you know those words tend to stick around. By 2022 he'd relocated to Glasgow on a partial scholarship to study musical theatre at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, working as a part-time waiter while building a stage career across Glasgow and Edinburgh. He played Lola in Kinky Boots. He appeared in The Hunchback of Notre Dame at the 2024 Edinburgh Fringe. He was working steadily and quietly in a country that didn't know his name yet. Producers reportedly reached out to him 3 separate times before he agreed to audition. When he finally said yes, he walked in with a plan already mapped out. The audition aired on March 28, 2026, and before a single note had been sung, Matty had already done something most contestants don't bother with. He'd researched Simon Cowell specifically, discovered that Prince's Purple Rain was one of Cowell's all-time favorite songs and chose it, not because it was his most comfortable option, but because he understood exactly who he was performing for. Before the music started, Cowell asked if he was a Star Wars fan. Matty answered instantly that he was too gay for that. The room erupted. Cowell, a man who spent decades perfecting the art of never being caught off guard on camera, genuinely looked surprised. The whole tone of the room shifted in that instant, before the pressure of the actual performance had even landed. If you've ever walked into a high-stakes moment and somehow gotten the entire room to laugh and exhale before things got serious, you know how difficult that is to pull off. Matty made it look effortless. The performance matched the setup. Every note landed exactly where it was supposed to. The judges were on their feet before the song ended. Kesai told him his personality alone made him a superstar the moment he lifted the mic off its stand. Cowell called it the biggest reaction the panel had seen all year. The audience was already chanting for the golden buzzer before the judges had finished speaking, and Cowell pressed it. What tends to get lost in all that excitement is what Matty said before he even started singing. In front of millions of viewers, he admitted he'd spent years believing he'd always be a singing competition loser. He named that fear out loud in one of the most watched rooms in British television, and then spent the next few minutes proving it wrong in real time. That combination, raw honesty paired with genuine vocal power, doesn't show up on Saturday night primetime very often. The clip went viral across the UK, the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and the US almost immediately, with diaspora communities across several continents pushing it further within hours. Matty had stopped being a contestant on a TV show. He'd become something bigger. And the most telling moment of his run hadn't even happened yet. Semi-Final 1 aired live on April 25 from the Eventim Apollo in London. The favorite to win that night's public vote was the dog-dancing duo Anastasia and Salsa, and that prediction turned out to be exactly right. Matty closed the show with a cover of Aerosmith's Dream On, and got a standing ovation from judges and audience alike. Alicia Dixon called it effortlessly sensational, describing it as a masterclass in delivering a top-tier vocal. Then Amanda Holden waited until the very last second, ignoring loud chants for other acts, before hitting her live golden buzzer, making Matty only the 4th act in the show's history to receive 2 golden buzzers in one series, joining names like Patty and Nico, the Blackouts, and Ollie Pearson. Here's the part of that moment that deserved a lot more scrutiny than it got. Amanda later revealed she'd asked producers what would happen if she didn't press her buzzer, and was told it would default to an audience vote. She since said she saved Matty specifically because she suspected the public would side with the dog act instead. A widely shared comment online summed up the mood perfectly that night. That Matty was ridiculously talented, but the public wouldn't necessarily reward him for it. A judge on the panel had reached the exact same conclusion, and did the one thing within her power to fix it. What nobody could have predicted was that the same problem would resurface in the final, at a scale no single golden buzzer could solve. The Britain's Got Talent final runs on a public phone vote open only to UK mobile numbers. Every past performance, every judge's praise, every golden buzzer, every viral clip, all of it resets to 0 the moment voting opens. This single structural detail is the entire foundation of what happened to Matty Juniosa, and understanding who it benefits makes the result feel far less mysterious. Think about where Matty's loudest, most engaged support actually lived. Filipino entertainment outlets had been tracking his story since March. Diaspora communities across Southeast Asia, the US, Canada, Australia, and the Middle East had been following him closely and posting about him constantly. The global energy around him on final night was real and substantial. But every single one of those fans, no matter how badly they wanted to vote, was locked out by a system built to accept UK numbers only. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a design choice made at a time when nobody had to think about a contestant whose most passionate fanbase was spread across multiple continents and couldn't participate in a domestic phone vote. Matty may well have generated more global buzz that night than anyone else on the stage. None of it counted toward a single vote. Now compare that to what the Hawkstone Farmers Choir brought into the vote. 34 members each tied into families, neighbors, farming networks, and agricultural associations rooted entirely inside the UK. Their story wasn't purely musical. The group was founded specifically to address the mental health crisis in British farming, and that message resonated with a large slice of the public in a way that had nothing to do with vocal ability and everything to do with shared identity. Behind them stood Jeremy Clarkson, whose series Clarkson's Farm had built one of the most loyal viewer bases in recent British television. He didn't need to say anything or ask for anything explicitly. His presence alone was a signal to a specific, motivated and large segment of the British public, and they responded. Matty didn't lose because he was outperformed. He lost because he was outstructured by advantages that had nothing to do with what happened on that stage, and because the people who actually understand the difference between raw talent and televised popularity had already made up their minds about him a full month before a single vote was cast. On April 30, 2026, a full month before the Series 19 final even aired, the official Andrew Lloyd Webber website published the complete cast list for the West End revival of Jesus Christ Superstar at the London Palladium. The production was set to run from June 20th through September 5th, with a press night on July 7th. Right there in the cast list, billed alongside Sam Ryder in the lead role, was the name Matty J from Britain's Got Talent, cast as Anna's. The professional theatre world had already made its decision about Matty Juniosa before a single vote came in. While the country was still deciding whether he'd finish first or fourth on a Saturday night phone-in, the West End had already signed him. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this story. The BGT final is a 2-hour emotional exercise shaped by community loyalty and whatever a viewer happens to feel while reaching for their phone on a given Saturday. A West End casting, on the other hand, involves directors, producers, and musical supervisors staking real money on whether someone can perform 8 shows a week for months. They're not voting on a feeling, they're backing a professional judgment. And that judgment said Matty was worth the investment before the public had even seen his final performance. After the results were announced, Matty posted on Instagram that he'd placed 4th on Britain's Got Talent, on Beyoncé's birthday no less, and said he was proud of that. He added that the whole experience had given him the drive he needed to land the Jesus Christ Superstar role. He'd already turned the show's platform into something most BGT finalists, including several winners, never actually managed to achieve. He also mentioned keeping a handful of golden confetti from his first golden buzzer, because he sometimes needs it to remind himself the whole thing really happened. That detail says everything about this story. Someone still marveling at the journey while holding a West End contract in his pocket isn't defined by a 4th-place finish. The trophy went somewhere else that night. The career was already waiting for him. So, do you think Britain's Got Talent's final voting format is genuinely fair to acts like Matty Juniosa, or is a public phone vote still the right way to decide a winner? Drop your take in the comments.